Welcome to the final part of my review of the 2020 miniseries, The Stand. This one I'm going to focus mostly on the final episode, and if something pops in my head, I'm going to bring that up too. The final episode of this, I was wondering what was going on because they really wrapped up almost everything from the book in episode 9. So I was wondering how could they fill a whole hour worth of content into this final episode? Now, there's two different reviews I could give this episode. But because of something I stumbled across online, whether it's true or not, I don't know, definitely changes my aspect of the review, and I'll get into that. So I want to do a recap of the final episode. So if I remember correctly, the final episode had Franny basically showing her give birth and explaining how he seemed fine at first and then he got sick and he had the flu, but then he just got better for no reason. That was all kind of a recap within 3 minutes of itself. Like, so once again, you lose that wondering if the baby's going to make it or any problems. No, it was just a narration of 2 to 3 minutes and the baby's okay, which was, a big part of the book was like, is humanity going to survive this even after the fact? Because, our baby's going to be able to be born. And in a 2 or 3 minute explanation, you find out they will. So that was a letdown. Then you see Stu and Tom come back, and then they do the 4th of July get together, which they do in the book, which was cool. But then they talk, Fran talks to Stu about going back to Ogunquit, which is great. All this stuff happens in the book, which are great. Once they leave, that's when things get interesting, to say the least, because then they end up having to pull stuff out of the way and whatnot. But then they end up at this house. They don't explain where it is, from what I remember. There's a cornfield near it, but it's just a regular house. It's not a shack, so it doesn't appear like it was Mother Abigail's old place or anything, even though in the book they do go back to Hemmingford Home and stop there, and Fran's pregnant again. Anyway, she's not in the miniseries, but in the book she's pregnant again, and they just they end the show right there, or end the book right there from those characters' perspectives, talking and dealing with Franny's baby. And in the show, they're at the house. They need baby supplies, so Stu drives into town to get pills and medication and stuff and baby supplies. Franny stays with the baby, feeds the baby, and then goes to get water out of this well. Well, they've got the pan pump in the middle of the well, boarded up with loose boards, and Franny's testing it, so you got a little suspense there. She gets a little bit of water, then she gets a bucket, and then out of nowhere, she's pumping the water, and then Flag shows up and whispers in her ear. She falls down the well, breaks her ribs, her ankle, fractures her hip, that kind of stuff. So she's basically going to die. Then they show, and I might be getting this a little out of order, they show in the corn a little girl, maybe 12, 13 years old, living in a tent in the middle of the corn. Okay. Just living there. Then Stu gets a flat tire on the way back, so he's stuck changing the tire. Now, Franny has her dream sequence with Flag, who's already dead. And this dream sequence, I think, would have been better put, my personal opinion, put on with the journey of Stu and Tom coming back to the free zone where Franny's in labor. Because in the dream sequence in the 2020s miniseries, Franny is tempted by Flag in this dream sequence where he'll say he can make her better, he can heal her, he just wants a kiss. And he'll make sure that nothing goes wrong with Stu changing his flat tire, because they tease the truck falling on Stu when he's changing the truck tire. And Franny looks like she's going in for the kiss, and she bites his mouth and rejects him. And then that's the dream sequence. I think it would have worked far better if she's in labor and she passes out and has that dream sequence with Flag, and Flag tempts her, maybe even with the kiss, I don't know, where he said, your baby will be born fine, won't have the flu, Stu will get back okay if you just kiss me. I think that would have been better placed there, even though Flag was still already dead. But they could have maybe even had it before the explosion in Vegas and still semi had it work where you still think Flag's dead. because it really made no sense that Flag at this point would be alive based on what they were showing. So in the miniseries, anyway, moving on from that, the miniseries shows the dream sequence with Flag trying to tempt Franny. Anyway, he also shows her the indigenous people, or not necessarily indigenous, but the native people on the remote island at the end of the book. That's how the book completely ends, which they did not do in the miniseries. In the book, Flag is alive. He's shown washing up on an island with all these native people there, untouched by society, and they end up bowing down to him because they've never seen anybody like him before. And that's how it ends, him laughing and being going to start it all up again, that he's still alive and he's going to teach these people how to be civilized and whatever, his words. In the miniseries, he shows Fran that, and I thought, well, I really don't like that, but at least, they did a nod to it. And I thought, okay, I don't know how they're going to end the series, but they did a nod to it. That's fine. Cut to Stu fixing the tire, coming back. And when he gets back to the house, this girl that's living in the corn is feeding the baby. And then Stu finds out Fran's at the bottom of the well. Then this girl helps him, knows his name, knows how to help him, and helps Stu get Fran out of the well. Then she places her hands over Fran and heals her entirely. And then they go to Gunkwit and the girl's disappeared, gone. You never hear any more about it. They don't mention her, nothing. Obviously, this was meant to portray a young Mother Abigail. That's what I think it was meant, who this little girl was meant to be, the reincarnation of Mother Abigail. So Flag survives, Mother Abigail survives, so they can do it all over again in 100 years. That's my take on it. I don't like it, but because the whole thing didn't make sense, because they went a little too supernatural, I think, with that, just the plain healing, even though it's hard for me to criticize and be a hypocrite with this, because in the book, Mother Abigail does heal Franny in the hospital. But that was Mother Abigail, not a random girl that just shows up in the corn out of the blue. It's just weird and different. And then, yeah, they end up in a Gunkwit, and they just talk at the water, and that's it. And then it shows Flag at an island. So it's like, it is ending the same way the book did. But what was weird about it is the native people there come at him with a bow and arrow, shoot the arrow at him, Flag catches it, and then does this to the guy that shot the arrow, and his head explodes. It looked horrible, and it didn't make any sense. And but once again, that could kind of probably been forgiven had the rest of everything gone okay. Now, I was really shocked to read before I did this review that Stephen King wrote that himself when it came to The Stand with Franny. Now, whether that's true or not, that's what I read. And that that's one thing Stephen wanted restored in the story, was Fran really never had her chance to stand herself. And that's why they put that sequence in the last episode with her having the confrontation with Flag. So it's a cool confrontation. I just think it was misplaced myself. But then it's like, well, how can I criticize that if that's what Stephen wanted? If that was Stephen's wish, if that's the way he written the story, that's his story. He can change it any way he wants. But it's an interesting concept because it's not part of the original book. As an extension, in a way, I understand it. And had the rest of the story played out better, then maybe it would have come off better. That part, the last episode, after hearing that, I hate to say it, I think it's okay. But at the same point, because the rest of the series was just a big dumpster fire, it really did nothing for me. So in the end, would I say avoid this? Actually, no. If you are a fan of The Stand, I do suggest you watch this, because you will my bet is that you will think just like me and just wonder how they screwed it up so badly. It's so bad that you want to see it. That's how bad it is. For those who have not seen it, I suggest going back and watching the 94 version, But if you want more of a reflection of what today's society would be, then this new version is probably a more correct adaptation of what would happen if The Stand happened today, just because of how society, and they didn't even focus all on that, what's going on in society and everything there, so it's hard to even say that. But stick to the 94 miniseries if you want. The book, by far, I listen to the audiobook all the time, over and over again. It's phenomenal. So check out the miniseries, the old miniseries, the graphic novel, the regular novel. I don't think you'll be disappointed. As for this new miniseries, I don't know, maybe they'll make it again in another 20 years. If I was a multi-millionaire, I'd try to take a crack at it. But so my review is done. Hope you found it informative. Take care.